Hey there, you're listening to the Not So Breakfast Show with Sasha and Ish. Alright, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show today. This is the one about creating your power zone, getting yourself in the zone that you've got the power, hence the name, the power zone. Well, at least that's what we're calling it, isn't it, Sash? We're talking about power zones.
It's just a zone we just made up just right then, the power zone. I've just been reflecting this week about how often, or the difference in how I respond to different situations. So sometimes somebody will do something really stupid around me or say something offensive or be aggressive or whatever, and I respond really well, like a really mature, fully functioning adult. And I'm able to process what's happening to me and still be of use to others around me and not fly off the handle, or I'm able to operate at my best. And at other times, exactly the same kind of situation happens, and I just do not operate at my best. I like just bad shit comes out of my mouth, or I don't process it very well. And I think, is that because the situation's different? I'm like, no, it's because in the first example, I just gave away my power. I let everything that was happening to me be the most powerful energy or presence in the room, rather than going, no, I've got the power. And so I've been thinking about, when I'm at my best, what does that look like? How do I respond? And how can I more consistently be like that? And that's when you said, you mean being in your power zone? And I went, yes, that's exactly what I mean. I just didn't know it was called that.
Yeah, because it is funny when you tip over the edge. You think sometimes, everything's fine. I'm coping really well. And you might be under a bit of stress. I'm coping good. And then it's just sometimes those small things and you just react the wrong way. It's kind of like road rage, right? You're driving along and everything feels fine. Then all of a sudden someone cuts in front of you. You're like, motherfucker. And you just absolutely lose your shit. And you're like, where did that come from? Well, probably, when did that start? Because probably that peak started hours, days before, and then just hit in that moment. And I guess if those moments happen to be in a board meeting or in a conversation, then you lose you lose your power. You lose your power zone. Catchphrase, trademark, copyright.
Yeah. You just give your power to the situation, or you give the power to somebody else. I know I have conversations with Chris sometimes, or with the kids, where they might be saying, Sash, you're making me so angry right now. And I'm like, no, only you can make you angry. I don't have that power over you. And when you're on the other side of it, you can see it so clearly, where a person is getting worked up and a disproportionate response to the situation. But when you're in the middle of it, so even when it's happening to me, and I know it's happening to me, and I know it's irrational, and I know I'm behaving badly, or I know I'm responding over the top, it just comes in a wave, and it's so hard to pull it back once you've kind of let that genie out of the bottle, or you've let that smoke start to come out. It's like you can't just put it back out. You sort of have to, you can, but it's very, very hard to do that. It's much more likely that once you let off that little bit of steam, you're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's really damaging to people around you. It's damaging to the situation. So I've got some thoughts about how we can stay in our power zone. But you were talking earlier about this whole fight, flight, freeze response that we have when we get under pressure. Tell me a little bit more about that, and I'll see how that links to what I think about how you can maintain your equilibrium in the power zone.
Well, yeah, so I guess when we talk about that fight, flight, freeze, those are stress responses to intense situations. So something happens, there's a change or a disaster or something that's not fair or something that goes on that's reasonably intense. And we tend to have one of three reactions, right? So the fight reaction is you just want to, you get up and you attack. I'm on the attack. I'm going to solve this. And the flight version of that is run away. So if I'm not going to fight it, if I'm not going to go head on, I'm out of there. And that could be passive versions of that and more aggressive versions of that. So it could just be in a conversation, someone says something and you snap and it's a bit of fight, or it's, that's it, I'm out, and you shut the conversation down and you leave. So that's the flight. So that's like the lower more passive version, and then there's the panic, attack, or run away. And then there's the freeze where you just don't do anything. You just literally stop like possum in the headlights, and you can't do anything. It was actually a conversation I overheard in a podcast. I can't recall the podcast, but they were talking about how with the times that are changing and all the changes that are happening.
Yes, Bob Dylan.
I was like,
they are changing.
As soon as I said that, I was like, it feels a bit country and western.
Sir, my friend, is blowing.
So these times that are changing, a lot of people are going to freeze and not do anything because they're just paralyzed by the choice or paralyzed by, well, I can't start a business right now because the economy's going to crash. And so they don't fight it. They don't run away from it. They just literally do nothing. And as a result, there is a whole lot of people that won't freeze, will take advantage of the opportunity, and they will be the ones that get the success if they can see it. Maybe we talk a little bit about this power zone and getting yourself into that zone, because I think that there's the advantage of when you're in that zone and you're in your meetings or you're interacting with people or stuff happens, you can just cope, right? It just seems to be you're feeling good and all of a sudden something happens and you just respond to it. And people see you and they kind of go, wow, that's some good leadership quality. But that also probably needs to be congruent maybe with the way that you act on your own. In fact, there's some statement around, if people saw how you acted on your own, is that congruent with the brand that you project? Because when those things don't align, maybe that's sometimes where we spin out of control. Because I have been... when you're in the car on your own and you losing your shit versus when your child's sitting next to you or, you're on the phone to someone.
I think I'm only laughing because I'm a reasonably energetic person in public because that's my natural energetic state. But I've always said I have like two speeds, on and off. So I'm like on in public. And then as soon as I get home to my little apartment in Christchurch, I go straight to bed. Like, it doesn't matter what time it is. I just go and lie on the bed for a while.
Recharge.
Just lie down. Just plug myself in. So you could look at that and go, oh, that's not very energetic. But that's part of the keeping myself safe and healthy and able to be in my power zone. The power zone is not about being powerful. It's not about going, I'm a powerful person and I want to crush others. It's about, I like the idea of the battery charge that says my batteries are fully charged, which means I can cope with whatever happens to me. And one of the reasons I like the battery analogy is that we've all had phones where when it decreases from like 100% to 50%, that takes 6 hours. But from 50% to 0% takes 2 hours. And you're like, what? Hang on, I thought I had 50% left. And I think as your energy gets depleted or your power bank or your power zone decreases, it's not a linear scale. You go from low depletion to like zero really fast. And so I think this idea of being in your power zone is about, as you notice yourself starting to behave suboptimally, is to go, before I get too low, I need to take some action to make sure that my batteries are recharged and I can be my most powerful in terms of the most responsive and the least reactive to whatever the situation I have around me. I want to make good choices. I don't want to just fly off the handle. I don't want to just behave irrationally. I want to be calm and collected. And so I think this idea of kind of protecting your energy in your power zone is what's really important. I sometimes liken it to the water filter in your fridge. So when I grew up, we certainly didn't have water that came out of the fridge where you put the glass up. I mean, it did if you put like a jug of water in the fridge for later to cool down, but there was no kind of put your glass up and out it came. And even sort of later in my life, that was what fancy rich people had, was fridges like that. Thankfully for technology, there's more and more fridges like that, and I've got one of those at my house now. But I might have shared this with you before. I didn't know that the filters needed replacing, so it just got lower and lower and lower. Like the water would hardly come out at all. And so I rang the fridge repair guy, And I paid like,
Excuse me, my water's not coming out.
I paid like $150 call out fee. He goes, oh, you have to replace the filters. I'm like, I did not know that. Do I look like I grew up with a fancy ass fridge that spat water out? No, I did not. So I learned that you have to replace the filters. And I thought, oh, actually, that's quite a powerful metaphor for like being a leader or being in a conflict situation or being part of a team. That if you as a water filter are just clogged up by having to sponge and deal with other people's shit all the time, the more stuff that comes into the top of you as a water filter, what comes out is less and less pure and less clean and less useful for other people. And this whole idea of taking care of yourself, it's not selfish to be self-full, to say, actually, I operate best when I have some good night's sleep, when I eat well, when I'm exercising regularly, when I'm pursuing my own interests and hobbies, I'm a better parent or whatever. So you get your water filter in good shape. So when life chucks stuff at you, you're still able to process it. You do the filtering so that then what comes out your mouth and your behaviors is congruent with you at your most powerful, you at your best, you at your most empathetic, your most thought-provoking, or your most disciplined, or whatever the power words are for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that's probably why we see in businesses when the non-pure stuff is coming out, one of the easiest things to do is just replace the manager, the leader, or the CEO who is acting as the filter if they're not self-aware to be cleaning themselves or getting themselves to optimal. And sometimes like, all right, we'll just put a new filter in, start again. And we see that play out in business. Actually, I do need to ask, is that your housekeeper making a few noises in the background who's operating your fridge?
We'll be right back.
If there was one skill that could double your income, advance your career, and increase your ability to influence, it is the skill of presenting. Whether it's on stage, in the boardroom, or at a job interview, the 30-minute presenter program will help take you to the next level. So check out our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, and get started on the 30-minute presenter program.
Oh, I'm in a coffee culture head office today, so there might be some people. I mean, you might call them minions. I call them people. I think it's polite.
Yeah.
Doing some things.
Oh, that's good. I did want to pick up on that that battery charge analogy and talk about the fact that there is that, and I'll call it deception over perception, that the first part of your battery drains, it seems to drain slower, right? And then it gets quicker. And it's the same when you fill up your car. Like I filled up my car the other day and drove down to see my parents in Tauranga. And when I got down to Tauranga, it was still on full. And I was like, woohoo, efficient car. Next day when I went out and started it up and then just went down to the coffee shop down the road, it was like 2 or 3 bars down. I was like, wait, what? When did that happen? And that deception of it's full versus the reality of actually what's happening. And I think sometimes getting back to our tipping point in the car, and we're using the road rage as the analogy, when did that start? When did that start depleting us and being able to invest in our energy, invest in ourselves? So when the stress comes, when the pressure is on, we can respond in our power zone as opposed to reacting to what's happening. And obviously, if we'd given ourselves more time to prep, we would have come up with a better term than power zone, although pending.
I love Power Zone is amazing. It's partly why I like there's 2 things that come out of that for me. One is this idea of having daily disciplines that you do irrespective of how you feel. So even when you don't feel like going for a walk outside, or even when you don't feel like having a healthy breakfast, or you don't feel like doing your morning meditation or whatever those things are, you just do it anyway because you know you're going to need it later.
Yeah.
That's equally true when you're feeling really good. So sometimes you go, I'm feeling a bit flat, so I won't do those things today. That's understandable. But equally, sometimes what happens is I feel amazing, so I'm not going to do my meditation. I'm going to have a donut instead. I'm going to skip leg day because I feel so good right now. That's a deception as well. And so I like the discipline of saying, if these are the things that I know keep me healthy, both emotionally and mentally and spiritually and physically, I'm just going to do them whether I feel like it or not, whether I feel too up to do them, where I feel too low to do them. I'm just going to do them because that's what charges my battery. Well, you're laughing, go, say.
No, I'm not. I'm actually laughing about what we were considering talking about as our topic about just dumb things that we've done. And for some reason, one just jumped into my mind there. I must have just been distracted.
Yeah, go. So what I was saying was so interesting. Tell me about that. So tell me about that dumb thing you did, Ishmael.
Well, I definitely wasn't in my power zone that day. So there's a couple of dumb things that I've done around cars. That's why it's jumped into my head, because we're talking about petrol and cars and driving. I was never like a really practical kind of fix the car kind of child. My brother always was out fixing cars with my dad and that kind of stuff. So I never did that stuff. So the first car I ever brought, I'd moved to Christchurch and I was living on my own and wanted to buy a car, and I brought this car, and I must have owned it for a good 8 months, and I picked someone up one day and they jumped in and they said, "Oh, your warrant's expired." I went, my what? They said, your warrant of fitness, you have to get that every 6 months, obviously back in the day. And I just had no idea that that was the thing. That was the thing. So I've been driving around with no warrant. Turns out I brought the car, it only had like a month on the warrant of fitness anyway, so I've been driving around with no warrant. So I get that sorted. But then the other one was, I never told anybody this because it's so ridiculous. If people are just going to listen, just go, no way did that happen. Okay. So it was with I was out with my girlfriend and a couple of our friends. We were driving around in a car and the oil light came on. And so we were like, oh no, like this. And it was quite late. I think we were probably out way too late. 1 a.m, cruising around being kids. And we're not kids, but young adults that do things that young adults do.
Oh, Nelson.
This was when I was in Christchurch at this stage.
Worse, the homes of Christchurch,
Exactly.
The drag races.
So so I can drive at this stage. I've got a car and everything. So, but I've never seen an oil light come on. So she goes, "Oh yeah, it's been playing up. I need to put oil in it." And I said, "Oh, where do we put the oil in?" She goes, "I have no idea. My dad does that." And we're like, "Well, we can't ring him now. It's like 1 a.m. So we're looking around and we're just trying to shine a torch. And the only thing I knew is that I knew how to read the dipstick to see if there was any oil. I was like, "Oh, let's take that out." Sure enough, it's out of oil. I'm like, "We've got to put some oil in there. We cannot find where the oil goes." And then I'm like, well, the dipstick must link into the oil. Why don't we just get a really thin stream of oil, flow it into the dipstick hole, which just for perspective is like the size of a pen, and it will go into the engine. So we're there with this 4-litre bottle of oil in the middle, like 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to get the smallest stream of oil pouring out to go into the dipstick hole. Needless to say, not a lot of oil went into the car that day. But anyway, that was my stupid things. I feel like I need something from you now.
And did you learn like later where it was?
Yeah, because her dad was kind of going, "Why is there a lot of oil sort of all over the engine?" I was, "Oh, yeah, well, we were trying to put the oil in." And he goes, "Well, it just goes in this massive hole on the top."
It's got oil written on the cap.
It's got an oil can on it. I was like, "Oh." Yeah, so actually, and then he showed me how to do that. So, yeah, that was useful.
I think it's fascinating how much as parents we forget to pass on to our kids, or even just as, other human beings interacting with other human stuff that because of your particular upbringing and other people have no idea of, and vice versa. So just stuff that you go, "Oh, yeah, I must have not been at school the day that they did that particular thing." Right? Yeah.
What about you? You got anything silly just to even it out, Sash?
I'm just going to rack my brain really hard to think of something that could possibly match the idiocy of that. Oh, honestly, so many. So I do remember the very first time I ate sushi. I was in Queenstown and I was 18 or 19, and I'd never been to a Japanese restaurant before, never seen sushi. This was, way back before sushi was ubiquitous in New Zealand and around the world. And I was with Philip and Jackie Mills, and I had gone down for a ski weekend. And I'd never skied before. I'd never been to Queenstown before. And I'd certainly never had sushi before. And I can just remember sitting in this restaurant. They'd taken some other people out for dinner, and I was there. And I remember just saying to myself, I had this one track playing in my head, and it was just see what they do what they do, see what they do what they do. It's just going second on everything. So like Philip would be, oh, would you like some holololola? And I said, that'd be lovely, thank you. I just had no idea what was coming. See what they do what they do. And it's actually that sort of mantra and refrain has stood me in good stead wherever I go in the world. If there's some unusual cuisine or an unusual custom. I was in Japan recently in a temple, and there was no English translation, and there was a particular service going on, or ceremony. It was all in Japanese. And in my head, I'm just going, see what they do what they do. I was bowing, sitting down, standing up, turning around twice, anti-clockwise, pointing at the sun, just all of the things. So it wasn't that I'm sure I didn't look stupid at that time. I felt really stupid. I felt, incredibly.
Not in your power zone.
I was not in my power zone at that time, but because I had been well fed, I was well rested, I didn't have a freak out. So I didn't fight it. I didn't go, oh no, I'm not eating raw fish. I didn't freeze, and I didn't run. I just was able to, so I wasn't out of my power zone because I was able to just respond in a mature kind of way, even though I was young. Whereas perhaps if I had been a little bit overtired, or I didn't have the self-confidence to know that I would be okay in that situation. And I think sometimes when we behave really badly, it's that thing where you go, what's at stake here? Why are you feeling so threatened by what is not a big deal? So the whole road rage thing, this is not happening to you, it's just happening.
Yeah.
Right? The person in the car is not going, screw you, lady, I can't wait to cut you off and show you who's boss. That's just kind of what's happened, and the meaning that we attach to it. I think we get out of our power zone when we attach all this meaning to stuff that's not real, or we make up stories about things in our head. And that's why, for me, you go, one of your questions earlier was, how do you know when you're getting depleted? And I think, I started on those two things. The first was to do your daily disciplines irrespective of how you feel. So whether you're up or down. And the second is at the end of every day, just to have a wee reflection where you just review and go, how did I do today? Well, I handled these situations great. And I noticed that in situation Z, I was a bit off. I was a bit snappy. That got through my skin. What's that about? And we do that kind of exploration so that we just get better and better at handling situations. And we can stay in that power zone where we choose how we respond, and we respond in a way that's congruent with who we want to be.
And also when we don't tell ourselves a story that justifies the position that we put ourselves in. So if we have snapped and then we just tell ourselves the story of, I'm just tired and that person just pissed me off and that's the way I reacted. And then suddenly we tell ourselves a story and that's what we believe, but it may not have been the case. So the ability to sit down and actually reflectively go back and kind of go, why did that happen? What caused that? And all of a sudden there may be something underpinning it that's been playing on your mind, and that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was actually a whole lot of other stuff. And that's why it's so important to actually be unpacking things that are happening around us. And those are those levels of awareness, because we don't always get it right. Sometimes we do try and pour oil into the dipstick hole. And sometimes we do have to just mimic what someone else is ordering in the sushi menu. But that's life, right? It's a learning experience, and you learn from that, but it's about learning from that. If I'm still pouring oil into the dipstick hole now, that's on me. But if I have actually recognized there was another way, I've now been shown it, and now I'm like maintenance guy, like a diva.
And you've passed it on to your girls, right? You've shown your girls, this is where the oil goes, this is where the dipstick is. Who's not the dipstick anymore, ladies? Okay, it didn't take me long, but I've thought of possibly the most mortifying moment, or one of the most mortifying moments of my life. I've shared with you how I flew all the way to Sweden and was the worst speaker ever. Yeah. Prior to that, to show you that I haven't learnt, when I was in year 12, sixth form, I decided at my high school, Onehunga High School, that I should go on the talent quest. And in the talent quest, I decided that what the school needed to hear was me singing a Tracy Chapman song. We can't even talk about it. The one that goes, sorry is all. Okay. So what's really lovely about that song is it's very slow. And so I dressed up, I put a costume on. Not unlike my running costume from last episode, I put on a singing a slow song costume, which was a long, flowy skirt, and I think it was prominent skivvy. And the song says, like, sorry. It's a whole verse about sorry.
Yeah.
And then there's another verse about forgive me. And then there's a whole other verse about I love you. And so it does tend to go on a bit. It's got a good little, chorus. But you can say, baby, can I hold? And I remember being through the second chorus and knowing that I'd well and truly lost the audience, but that I had another verse and another chorus to go. And I don't think the audience was booing, but it might have been close to booing at that stage. And there were like local DJs from the radio station who had come to judge it. And at the end, they stood up and made a comment about each one, and they said that I was, just like a rock chick, like laughing and joking about how unrock I was. I think I got third. Maybe I remember that. But it was one of those moments where you just know in the moment that you've misjudged the situation, but it wasn't a fight, flight, or freeze. It was kind of like even though, Nemo wasn't out then, it was a just keep swimming. You just keep going. You're committed now. You just have to get to the end. And at the end, it will all be over and you can just go home and never do that again.
So, because I can imagine that little Sash actually prepped pretty damn well.
Little Sash knew the words.
Little Sash knew the words. She'd done the time. She just had completely misread the situation.
The mood of the room, yeah.
The mood of the room, yeah. Because you do see that sometimes in karaoke where the person's like, I'm going to do the song, and they know that first verse, but then they get up there and then they realize, wait a second.
Hallelujah.
A whole lot more verses and choruses. And you just see them slowly drown until it comes back around. It must have been hallelujah.
I've kind of two minds about that because I look back on that person and I'm still kind of really proud of her because there were a whole lot of kids at the school that could sing better than me. But whatever their environment was, they just didn't have the guts to. Where were they on Talent Quest Day?
Yeah.
So there's something that's kind of pure about the little me that was like, let your little light shine. And, I kind of want to keep that. I'd really like to wrap that 16-year-old in love and say, you weren't in the right place at the right time, but your heart was good. And I think, we can forgive ourselves the mistakes that we make. Your heart was good and pure. No one had showed you where the oil thing was before, and that's, whose fault's that? I mean, I just want to, I know Ish's mum doesn't listen because we do too many swears, but I mean, like that's a failure on your parents' part there, Ishmael. Like that's literally not your fault. That's like your dad's getting all like close to your brother and excluding you. I mean, have some therapy about that, man.
Exactly. Come on, Dad.
Mate. So be a water filter. Like keep yourself pure. Do your things that you need to do so you can stay in the power zone. Not to crush people, but so you can be at your most powerful and empathetic and respond in situations. Not get overwhelmed by them. You don't want to freeze or flight or fight or all of that stuff. It's like how, when all the stuff around us is going crazy, how can we maintain our equilibrium? And those daily disciplines, do stuff that keeps yourself well and recharges your battery and keeps you up and do that. That's good shit. Oh, I've got something we practiced. So we've got this new bit of kit at work today. It's this amazing kind of touch screen. And we've got a new webcam. And so when I do my PowerPoint presentations on it, it has closed captioning. So as I speak, it comes up with the captions, right? It's super cool.
Wow, that is cool.
It has a filter where it doesn't allow swears. So as I was talking and other people in the room were talking, and I said something like, "Oh shit, where's that?" And what comes up on the screen is, "Oh, where's that?" And I noticed that. So, it doesn't dictate the swears. So then me and the two other people in our workplace just kept saying every swear word that we knew, and it would not type any of them. But we would go penis, vagina, bum, and it would type them because they're anatomical words, but it wouldn't say shit and all the other swears. It wouldn't do those. And I'm like, wow, we're being censored.
Wow.
Where's free speech when you need it, right? Where's free speech? Bloody Microsoft purifying everything we do.